We were initially kind of known as the first solar power town in America. Then after Hurricane Ian, I think we became quickly known as probably one of the most resilient new towns in America.
Syd Kitson, welcome.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So really excited to have this conversation, a timely one. And I feel like everybody knows what Babcock Ranch is, but let's start with the basics. What is it?
Well, Babcock Ranch is a new town that we're building in Southwest Florida. And what's kind of unique about it is we're trying to prove that a new town can work hand in hand with the environment. So let me give you a 2-second background if that's okay.
Yeah, please. That'd be great.
So we started with, we purchased 91,000 acres. That's 143 square miles, or an area that's 5 times the size of the island of Manhattan. And then we sold 73,000 acres to the state of Florida in the largest land purchase in the history of the state. And we then ended up with 18,000 acres. And out of the 18,000 acres, we're preserving half of that. So at the end of the day, 90% of the original ranch is in preservation forever. And that's, for us, when you try and put something together like this that's so complex, to have that preservation for generations to come. My kids, my grandkids, my great-grandkids are all going to be able to enjoy this land forever. So that's something that we're very excited about. And then we have approvals and are moving forward with building a town that will have probably over 20,000 homes and about 6 million square feet of commercial space. So we'll have about 55 to 60,000 people that ultimately live there. But I think it's how we integrated with the environment and sustainability, resiliency, and innovation. That's really the hallmark of what makes Babcock very unique.
And so just for context, it was back in 2006 when you bought the land, right?
So we did this. That's a great point. So we did this. You're right. We closed in 2006, and as we were preparing all of our plans and approvals and permits and everything else, this little thing happened in 2008 that kind of shut us down when the entire financial markets just evaporated. And so what we did was we used that time to really perfect what it is we wanted to do. We did get our approvals, but we spent a lot of time planning, really putting our initiatives together. And I think probably during that time, one of the things that I'm most proud of is we're able to, and it took us 8 years, to negotiate a deal with Florida Power and Light to build the first solar power town in America. We have 150 megawatts that power the town. That's 700,000 panels on about 840 acres. We were able to work with them to put in one of the first solar to battery facilities in the country, and they've been learning from it and seeing how it best works. It's when it gets dark, it discharges over 4 hours, and we've been learning from that also. So a lot of innovative and creative things that we're doing during that period of time.
Let's walk through. You hit upon them, several already. The elements that make Babcock Ranch so unique, resilient, sustainable, from solar energy to battery storage to water conservation to the planning. Tell us about all the different elements that go into making this such a unique community and a sustainable one.
So one of the first things we did during the planning part of this was, how do we create the most resilient community in Florida? And you have to do that from the beginning, because if you don't, it's just going to cost you more, because you create these legacy issues. And we went back and looked at maps from the 1940s to find the natural flowways that were in Babcock Ranch. And what made that important was we wanted to stay out of those areas where Mother Nature was going to put the water. Because one thing we've learned is that Mother Nature is going to win every time if you try and go against her. So we preserve these flowways that now have proven to be incredibly helpful to us, because I think we have one of the most sophisticated stormwater management systems that's been designed. And then we also preserved all the wetlands. So if you drive into Babcock Ranch, it feels different. You'll notice right away, because all these conservation and wetland areas are all throughout Babcock Ranch. And those also have a tremendous capacity to store water. When we got started here, we really looked at how we were going to plan the community, but we focused on the environment, we focused on energy, we focused on education. We built a public charter school before we had anybody living there. And the
Wow.
reason we did that was we wanted to be multi-generational. So if you have a school and you know and it worked, about half the people moving to Babcock Ranch are young families. So we have multiple generations that live there, which is really exactly what we'd hope for. Once you drive through this community, and it's big, but most of what we have are roundabouts as you kind of drive through the community. So instead of the typical grid system that you have in Florida where you hurry up and wait at a
Yeah.
light, that you have a continuous loop around the community, and I think people really enjoy it. It's more calming. You have better view corridors. So our transportation system, I think, is something that we've spent a tremendous amount of time working through. We also spend a lot of time on technology. We have fiber to every home and business a week. So every person that moves into Babcock Ranch gets a gigabit, a full gigabit.
Wow.
And then our businesses can get up to 5, maybe 10 gigabits if they need it. So that fiber is in every single home at Babcock Ranch. And I think that's why we have a lot of people at Babcock who work from home. You know, we have this tremendous backbone that makes it easy for them to do it. We also spend a lot of time on health and wellness. And if and that includes, we have 150 miles of trails. And we have all native plant materials, so people really feel part of nature. We have a great health system. We have Lee Health, and we also have Tampa General as part of our health system at Babcock Ranch, and really focusing too on preventative care. One of the things that I think is proven, if you live in a healthy environment, you're going to live longer, and I think that's something that we're proving out. The other thing that we have, and I started to talk about it a little bit, is storm safety. So we were initially kind of known as the first solar powered town in America. Then after Hurricane Ian, I think we became quickly known as probably one of the most resilient new towns
100%.
in America, which was really an incredible experience, and one that I will personally never forget.
So with all of that together, curious about lessons learned in terms of what's most appealed to people who have chosen to move there. You know, whether it's sustainability, because we have renewable energy, innovations around mobility and transportation, public spaces, walkability, all of those things. What are the things you think have most stood out to buyers and people who've chosen to be there?
That is such a great question. And we've done surveys, but there is a common theme among the people who have moved to Babcock. And number one is that they love to be outdoors. So we do have this extensive park system that we're building right now, and we're building in the process of building a park that is going to be focusing on people with disabilities. It's attainable for everybody, and I think it'll be one of the best in the state of Florida. But I think people really want to be a part of something unique like this. The number of electric vehicles per capita at Babcock Ranch is very, very high. So people really embrace the sustainability. They embrace environmental responsibility, and they know, for example, when they move to Babcock Ranch, we not only require native plant materials because they're better in the wet, they're better in the dry, and they're better in wind, but we also limit the amount of turf that they can have in their yards. But they know it's for the right reason, because we're trying to do what's right for the environment. We want to, as I said, we want to be additive.
Cost is, of course, always an issue. I think so many people want all of these things, but to do all these things and offer these things, how much more expensive is it at the outset, and then over the long haul, how far ahead do you actually come out?
Yeah, and I would encourage all anybody who's building of anything of size to think about and to account for all the implications of maybe spending a little bit more up front. But I think the return on that investment is pretty significant. When Hurricane Ian hit, we had a strong category 4 hurricane sit on top of us for 8 hours. 8 hours. Sustained winds of over 100 miles an hour, gusts of 150 miles an hour. And I was there through this whole thing. I was absolutely blown away by how little damage there was. People were walking all over Babcock, just looking around. Because if you looked at all the devastation around us, there was loss of life, loss of property. It was just awful. Yet here we were in this self-contained community that had minimal damage. When we spent that money up front, but now let's talk about the return on that investment. The return on that investment is that we didn't have tens of millions of dollars of costs to fix all of the issues that that everyone else had to deal with, and because of that, the sales at Babcock Ranch have been fantastic. Last year we were ranked 5th in the nation in home sales throughout the entire nation. And remember, we closed our first home in 2018, so within 5 years we shot up to number 5 in the country. And I think that's a direct result of that investment up front. And by the way, it doesn't cost more to live at Babcock Ranch because of these things for the homeowners. I mean, we're very competitive in the marketplace. So I think it's a win for everybody, and I think those are the kinds of things people need to be thinking about going forward as they develop these new communities.
Syd, you're a former NFL football player turned real estate developer. Why sustainability?
It's really interesting. So before I started playing football, I spent an enormous amount of time hiking, camping in the mountains of up and down the East Coast, whether it be the Adirondacks, the Appalachians, the Smokies, and I would spend 3 weeks at a time hiking, these wonderful places. I think for me it was wanting to create things, and I've always been interested in real estate. Probably more than anything else, I consider myself an environmentalist, and so a lot of people ask me, well, how does that work? You feel strongly about the environment, and you want to be a developer. How does that work? And my comment was, I think it's perfect. I think it's a perfect marriage, because if we do it right, that's great for the future of Florida or anywhere. Because with 1,000 people a day moving down here, I think that combination is a good one. Now, I will tell you, I don't miss hitting people, but I've always had a passion for what I'm doing right now. It's not a job for me. I truly love what I do, and wouldn't trade it for anything.
And gosh, Syd, listening to you, it's amazing. In doing this project, going through the Great Recession, pandemic, hurricane, in so many ways, as you're laying this out, I mean, I think your thesis is this is the community of the future. If that's the case, how do we do more of these? And what is needed to do it?
I think it's what you're doing right here, right now. I think bringing attention to a place like Babcock Ranch and others who are doing the same thing. So the goal here is that people will take a look at what we're doing, and not only will they do the same, but they'll do better.
And what about lessons for existing cities? I mean, so I'm sitting right now in Brickell, and Miami's financial district, very densely populated, lots of development, but of course, I mean, I think, in so many ways, the example that is set that Babcock Ranch has set, that you've set, is the example that existing cities, urban areas, towns should aspire to. What are the lessons too in terms of how to aspire to that and actually deliver on that in a place? Yeah. This is not greenfield development. This is a place that's already built out in so many ways.
Yeah. And that's a challenge. I mean, you have this legacy infrastructure, but I think, when you talk about Miami as an example, they are thinking about it. Yeah. And I think they are taking steps. And what I tell these towns and communities throughout the nation and even around the world, they go, start somewhere. Start to harden your infrastructure. You don't think short term, think long term. Think 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years down the road. So how do you start with creating a resilient community now, with building codes, with where you build, how you build, and then working that infrastructure, which is so important, working with the utilities and making sure that if that needs to be corrected, start now, because I promise you, your kids, your grandkids, and your great grandkids are gonna thank you, for doing it, because you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And you can't do it all at once. There's not enough money to do it all at once. But you just begin the process and start now, because if you wait till tomorrow, it's going to be too late.
Well, Syd Kitson, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Appreciate it.